name's Jonathan Smith. I'm the business leader for Rockwell Automation in the UK for the Power Control Division. I want to talk a little bit about energy strategies and the sort of reasons why you might want to be considering, or really ought to be considering, having an energy strategy going forward. One of the things is, why should you consider an energy strategy? You know, the fact is, you probably think you've heard it all before. Energy and saving energy has been a topic for decades. We had the Switch It Off campaign in the 1980s. You've also probably heard of all the green issues, and you probably think green issues are for governments. Kyoto brought us the climate change levy, but we really negotiated our way around that with better deals from our energy suppliers, so the impact of the levy was very minimal. And you possibly also think it's the same for everybody, for all your competitors, and that we can just pass on the energy costs to our customers, and consequently it has little impact. Well, of course, all those things are possibly things you considered, but in reality things have changed rather. The global demand for energy, particularly from the emerging markets in Asia, has been increasing at an exponential rate. We've seen big peaks in pricing before the recent recession, oil prices peaking up at over $140 a barrel. All these things are related to the demand of energy within our world, our globe. We've got climate issues, and we've now got carbon reduction commitments embedded in the EU and in UK legislation, and we've got new targets about to be agreed at the Copenhagen summit in a few weeks. We've already got an indication of the possible emission targets that will be set there: 20% reductions by 2020, possibly rising to 30% if sufficient countries agree for the UK. And of course, going further forward to 2050, we're looking at significant reductions in carbon emissions. An 80% reduction on 1990 emission levels is currently the figure that's being touted. We've also got increasing environmental legislation coming in the form of emission controls. The Large Combustion Plant Directive is impacting significantly on our power plant in the UK. The coal-fired power stations are going through significant upgrade programmes. It's already happened with regard to desulfurisation. Now there's reductions in NOx emissions, and going forward, of course, there's likely to be investment in carbon capture technology. The financial crisis is also something that's come about of recent, and it's changing the way we look at things, but it's also changing the way we can actually move forward. The investment required to meet our environmental objectives is very large, and of course arranging finance in a world where we have major difficulties with the finance organisations is potentially going to create some difficulty in getting that investment moving forward. We have energy security issues. Not much is said of that of recent, although it is beginning to fit on the political agenda. We've recently seen in the last 12 months or so a gas crisis with disagreements between Russia and the Ukraine, meaning that gas supplies were cut or severely reduced into Western Europe. The potential for that to cause problems in the UK is significant because the gas production that we have from the North Sea is reducing, but the UK gas demand is continuing to increase. So our dependency on imports is ever rising, and of course if that security of supply is not achieved, then we could see some interesting situations occur. And in fact this is recognised in a recent report by Ofgem looking at the possible scenarios for energy and energy supply in the future. And as a direct quote from their report, they say, indeed, security of supply is not absolute, and a shortage of supply is likely to result in a demand response in order of at least cost, with voluntary reductions in industrial demand occurring ahead of involuntary disconnections. So here we have a government-sponsored organisation actually stating that energy security going forward could be of considerable concern, not just to the domestic consumer but also to industry. And of course, energy prices. I mentioned earlier about energy prices rising and spiking, but when you actually look at energy over a longer period of time, really up until the mid part of this decade, energy prices for industrial consumers had tended to reduce or remain relatively stable, literally for decades. And it's only over the last few years that we've seen an increase in real terms of energy costs for our industrial plants. So of course this means that we have to be looking at a robust energy strategy, because energy prices are not likely to reduce in the future. They'll keep rising at an indeterminable rate. The security of our supply can no longer be taken for granted, and the competitiveness of our organisations will potentially be compromised without positive intervention. The likelihood of a competitor company or competitor organisation investing in energy reduction methods and measures is very high, and of course it's important that everybody does this, not just for the issues that have been raised, but also really to remain competitive in really a very, very global economy. And of course one of the things that isn't always recognised is that every pound that is spent on energy is a pound less profit, and obviously the converse is also true. So saving energy not only makes good sense, but it also improves the profitability of organisations. Of course, energy use in buildings accounts for something like 40% of our total consumption of energy, and a great deal of waste takes place, whether that's passive waste or whether it's active waste. Passive waste through lack of insulation and lack of good environmental considerations when the building was first put together, or whether it's actually due to more active waste due to poor controls. One of the areas where significant savings can be made is by improving controls within building and building management systems. It's important to look at all the control elements, the environmental controls in relation to occupancy and the actual zoning of the requirements in the building, but also to look at how the mechanical ventilation systems, which are particularly energy intensive, actually work, and where they can be utilised more efficiently by the introduction of additional controls or variable speed drives, or indeed where they can actually be eliminated altogether and free air can be used for ventilation purposes.